All right, let's finish the show today by talking about the path to developing some of these high performance traits. I'm sure that you've read stories or articles of C-suite executives taking on some mammoth challenges. I remember as a kid, Richard Branson, that guy with Virgin, famously tried to fly around the world in a hot air balloon. Completely bonkers. Plenty of executives try and summit Everest or maybe complete an Ironman. Some other big challenge. The question is why? After all, they're already really busy. They've got massive demands at their role at work, and quite often they've got huge responsibilities with their families and friends, maybe some semblance of a social life. But the answer, of course, is layered to this. There is the joy of the commitment and the pride of accomplishment, and we shouldn't relegate that to an afterthought. That's important. Okay, there's a little bit of ego and satisfaction around getting through tough stuff. That draws them because they're high performers. But the truth is that I think there's something a little bit more powerful than that. Because these challenges that leaders tend to love to take on, they realize that by going on the journey, it actually helps them show up and perform better as leaders. The reward is a direct transfer, them becoming a better leader. In other words, it becomes a route for them towards getting an edge in the workplace. You think about it, it's like, how? How does that happen? In other words, aren't we just dumping another thing on top of an already overcompressed life? But the truth is that when I see someone take on a big, hairy, audacious goal, something that's a little uncomfortable, certainly gets them out of the comfort zone, requires a lot of commitment and preparation. It's often a forcing agent. It's an amazing opportunity to create the framework that drives operational efficiency. In other words, the leader is forced into a whole bunch of decision making, filtering out only the important stuff, allowing their energy to go into. In other words, they force optimization, prioritization, and effectiveness. What do they say? If you want something done, give it to a busy person. Now, in addition to this, though, it's not just a great operational efficiency mechanism. There's also the preparation that is necessary. And typically, the goal-driven leaders that I work with often take on challenges that have a huge physical component. And the required preparation that goes into arriving and being successful at that goal typically trends positive in helping that leader showing up on a day-to-day basis with better health, improved energy, better cognitive function, and certainly increasing physical resiliency and staying power. In other words, the training, if we want to call it that, necessary for completion and success often drives their physical daily readiness. And that's a huge component. So suddenly, taking on this thing that at first might look like dumping something on top of life is a forcing agent for operational efficiency and bringing up cognitive function and energy so that they can bring their better selves every single day. And that's great. But there's one other component that's also really powerful to this, and that's through the actual journey itself. I always talk about the journey being the venue of the biggest reward, more than the actual destination, the goal, the event, whatever it might be. Imagine training for an Ironman. Let's just use that because that's the one that's closest to my skill set. It's a huge challenge for anyone. Absolutely. It is probably the most demanding single-day endurance challenge out there. And so in order for anyone to be successful at that, particularly if you're time-starved, you're going to need to be organized, committed. It's going to require some toughness and grit. You're going to need to filter out some of the distractions and the things that are creating noise. So in other words, you're going to need to prioritize. And you typically are going to benefit if you've got someone in partnership, a coach in other words, to help you retain perspective, to reflect, to make decisions, to help you course correct, to organize all of those components. And even with all that in place, the journey it just simply is going to include a whole bunch of setbacks, adversity, and obstacles. And that leader that's decided to take this challenge on is going to have to overcome them. They're going to have to get through these. They're going to have to be adaptable, look for different routes. They're going to have to learn how to manage the setbacks. They're going to need some grit when the going really gets tough. In other words, that journey is training the brain. That's what's occurring there. Remember what we talked about in part 2. Organizations love to hire elite athletes because they know they're going to get someone that is adaptable, resilient, grit. They're going to be tough. They're going to be able to collaborate. And so, in other words, this journey is providing the vehicle to actually train the brain. In other words, hone, improve, develop the traits of high performance. And it is through this journey that these traits continue to emerge. They improve. And of course, as I talked about in part 2, these traits are easily applicable to their roles at work. In other words, it helps them become better leaders, greater performance in work. In other words, taking on these challenges, this very big challenge, ends up not being a question of how do they fit it all in, but instead becomes the catalyst of being the vehicle to drive A, both improved organizational effectiveness, B, greater physical performance in every single day there so that they can show up better, process information, make better decisions, and have capacity to respond to external forces. And thirdly, drive and improve the traits of high performance, which you could say are the traits of great leadership. Now, it takes time. It's not a light switch. Just because you enter a big event or something like that doesn't mean that it's just going to happen. But it does emerge and evolve. Now, if that's why a leader does this, just like I talked about earlier with an elite athlete, here's good news. You don't need to be a CEO to apply these principles to your own performance. You don't need to decide to try and fly a balloon around the world. You don't need to enter an Ironman. You certainly don't need to climb Everest. But all of us, no matter what our purpose is, no matter where we're seeking to improve, we all benefit by taking on a big challenge. We all do. Now, what that challenge is really depends on where your start line is, because it's important to have a challenge that is a little scary and daunting, requires commitment so that you can adhere to the practices and the steps to get you there, but is also ultimately accessible. And so it's no good for me if I've currently completely sedentary to say, I'm going to do an Ironman, because that is just like trying to climb up to the top of Everest in one step. But I could do something that's challenging, that maybe is a reward if I arrive there, but requires commitment. So it's important as you listen to this, I believe, to really consider where's your starting point and what is something that might sound fun, challenging, but goodness me, I'm not sure if I can do that. Then you've got something here. Because when you get out of your comfort zone, when you commit, when you decide and you actually take action to take the very first steps on what will be a journey, I promise you, you will grow. You will improve. Sport, or just a heavy emphasis on personal well-being, in my mind is the perfect vehicle to drive improvements. And it's going to foster the conditions and deliver the experiences that won't always be comfortable, but will help you hone and develop the traits of a high-performance mindset. And I think that's how you should approach it. It is a vehicle for me that I'm going to take on with really pretty risk-free components that I'm going to feel better and show up better. And ultimately, that's going to drive high performance. And so, coming back to the original question, remember, it was asked about those Olympic swimmers that seemed so calm, could step up to the occasion, that navigated all of the adversity. Is there anything we can learn from that? So, yes, there's nothing magic to it. There isn't. They've just gone through years of development, and you can too. Because that mindset is a result of their journey, of their experiences. And the good news is it's absolutely accessible and applicable for all of us. I want to finish today with a quote. It's from Pat, a CEO who I've coached for many years. And I think that his words really encapsulate much of what I'm talking about today. He was in a point of reflection and he decided to write me an email, unsolicited. I'm going to read out one section of it because it's quite nice for me, but it also really tells a story. Here's what Pat said. He said, "I didn't anticipate the results when I first came to you for help. I was chasing improvements in my triathlon performance, but the process completely evolved how I operate as a leader. I established skills and habits that improved my effectiveness, my capacity to navigate stressful situations, and the process helped me retain perspective and focus when the going got tough. In other words, the journey of my sport increased my physical resilience, but also my mindset and brain received the best training possible, and it informs all I do in leadership and life." Goodness me. Thanks, folks. That is a high performance mindset. I'll see you next time.